Now, for decades, it's been known and made a norm that January is the most stressful month, to the point where some call it the Monday of the year. There's a hangover from December, which was filled with loads of only fun activities and possible recklessness. The Credit Ombuds warns that now that we have sobered up and getting back into the swing of things and to the reality of back to school, there are many expenses to get by, and consumers make use of credit cards and apply for loans. They say if consumers did not budget or plan for those expenses that have now crept its way to us like a pounding headache, and we just have to apply for credit, we should now be smart about it and ensure that a proper affordability assessment is done by the credit grantor. We take the discussion further now with Lee Soobrathi. He is the HOD responsible for case management from the Credit Ombuds. Good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for coming through. I last saw you last month, so compliments of the new season.
Thank you so much for having us. Always a pleasure.
All right, so when we had you here in studio in December, we were basically making that awareness to our consumers not to overspend during December. So we know, of course, that January is and will always be after December. But surprisingly, you still have people who never plan appropriately, will always be complaining of January, of being broke, asking when is the end of the month coming.
Yes, sure. Yeah. I mean, there's a reason why they call it hashtag January. Is because December is sort of a month of excessive spending, excessive sort of party and plannings and so forth. And what we find is that consumers end up in January in a sort of a financial hangover. I mean, you're coming with your expenses from December and unplanned expenses in many instances. So what we try to inform consumers is that you're coming out of this year, let's make 2020 a different year. Let's a consumer know their credit status, let them know what the plans are for 2020. So come December, you might have sort of a kitty in order which to splurge from. What we find, consumers overspend sometimes in December, and in January you're left with these unexpected consequences, and it can send you into a sort of a financial spiral where you are over indebted, you can't pay your debts, and end up being negatively listed at the credit bureau.
All right, so you say that now in Jan we should start planning for December so that we don't suffer in January of 2021.
That's
How do you go about doing that?
Well, it goes to the heart of the situation. You got to know what you spend, you got to know what you earn. At this part of the year, it's prudent for one to make a list of the expenses for the year. And I think the biggest step is to know what is your current status at this present time. If you cannot make a payment to a credit provider, call the credit provider, try to make an arrangement with them. It's better you inform them than just to keep quiet about it. And what there's 6 points that we advise consumers to take at this point is, first of all, know your credit status.
And what's the importance of knowing your credit status?
Yes,
I know that you always emphasize that during our interviews.
I mean, your credit status is your credit identity in the credit industry. For example, let's say you need a loan of 10,000. If you go to a credit provider, the first thing they are going to ask you is that, I mean, do you have any outstanding debts? And they will confirm them and verify that according to your credit bureau profile. So if you're not aware of your credit status, contact a credit bureau. You're entitled to a free credit report once a year. That credit profile will list all of your accounts, what you're owing, if you are in arrears. And I mean, being 1 or 2 months in arrears technically can prevent you from getting further credit. So it's very important to maintain a good credit status.
And I suppose with the high levels of corruption as well, you get people who open credit accounts using others' ID numbers and names. So it's important to check the list of your creditors all the time.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, fraud is prevalent. I mean, we hear every day of consumers being defrauded, of their identities being stolen, so to speak. So I mean, the more proactive steps that you take to ensure that your credit status is in a good state, I mean, the better for you. You can either foresee something coming, or you can take steps adequately to correct any sort of mishappenings on your
And one of your tips really is for people to know how to go about prioritizing their debt.
Yeah, you got to prioritize your debt. So make a list of your expenses. And I mean, the way to go is get rid of your smaller debt so that you can end up taking the extra funds that you have and pay it over to your larger debt. I mean, things like your vehicle installments, things like your home loans are the larger debts. I mean, they take much longer to pay off. But if you secure your smaller debts, like debts normally under 20,000 or 15,000, and it puts you in a better and more stable financial position.
One of the tips, again, that you've mentioned is don't hide. And it sort of really has become a norm for people not to answer withheld numbers, your private numbers, when they know that they owing people or they owing their credit providers. How important is it not to hide?
It's very important, and I'll give you an example. If as an example, a credit provider is looking for you to make payment, and they're searching for you and they can't find you, on your credit bureau status, there is a adverse listing known as non-contactable, untraceable, or absconded, which means that they will notify the credit bureau to tell them, listen, we can't get hold of this consumer, can you please list them as non-contactable, sort of thing. Now, this can have detrimental effects on your ability to get further credit, because if you approach me as a credit provider, I would think twice about granting credit to a person that I cannot find, or that I cannot find when the debt is not paid. So it's very important that you contact your credit provider before they contact you, so that you can have control of the situation, and that you can enter into an arrangement, if possible, with them, and take alternative means of paying the debt if you can't afford the full installment.
So share with us the common queries and complaints perhaps that are often brought to your office during this time of the year.
I mean, at this part of the year, it's often things like, I've paid up my account in December and November, but my credit record is reflecting negatively, or that I feel I'm being overcharged in terms of interest on my service fees. I mean, what we advise consumers is that when they are taking out credit, it's important that they understand what the cost of credit is. Because a lot of consumers, they will view their statements after many months and look at the interest rates, and then they might get a bit scared, is because they're looking at the cascading effect of the interest rates on the account. So obviously, they must know what they're being charged and how a statement works, and our office can assist in educating them on how to look at a statement. In that regard.
All right, so how do you go about intervening in such matters, and just a recap of what your office does?
Okay, so there is a process involved. If a consumer is unsure about or has a valid dispute, they can contact our offices firstly if they're unsure, but the process is that you have to give the party an adequate opportunity in order to respond to the complaint, and they may resolve it in most of the cases. But if they don't, and 20 business days has passed, they can contact our offices with a reference number, and we'll be able to get involved and just try to reach a solution that's amicable and that's fair in the circumstances.
All right, we have to leave it at this. Thank you so much for coming through. Hopefully, we've already taken some notes on how to save for January of next year. Thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you so much.